Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Indulge podcast. My name is Pranav Sriram, and today we have someone very special joining us all the way from UK. We have actor and comedian Sindhu Vee joining us in this podcast. Hi, Sindhu. Thank you so much for taking time to talk to us.
Hi, and thank you for having me. And
We're tuning in this particular interview to sort of discuss your recently released show, The Pradeeps of Pittsburgh. And it's been gaining a lot of traction online. People have been, really they've been sort of reeled in to watch the show, out of curiosity to actually see the sort of story that has been put out and the way the treatment that it has got, which is obviously a very comical sort of treatment, but at the same time, there's a lot of heart in it. So, for first of all, I would want to know, from your end, as you went into the show, as you got introduced to the story. First of all, if you could introduce the story for people, for viewers in India, for those who might not have sort of come across it yet.
so the story is of a family, the Pradeeps. There's the wife, Sudha Pradeep, the husband, Mahesh
Yes,
Pradeep, the three kids, two are teenagers, Bhanu
right.
and Kamal, and one is the younger one, Vinod.
Yeah.
And we have moved from modern day, and this is very important, modern day Ahmedabad. Although you wouldn't know
Okay.
it's really Gujarati, but modern day Ahmedabad, the United States,
Okay.
because Mahesh Pradeep has a SpaceX contract and it's his dream
Mm-hmm. Right.
to
Okay.
have that kind of work. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Sudha Pradeep, like many, many Indians, and also she's a neurosurgeon,
Mm-hmm. Oh
is
wow.
not
Okay.
interested in moving. She's
Hmm.
like, home
Obviously.
is fine. Why do I? I'm like, mujhe
Okay.
nahi jana abroad. I do not want to live abroad.
Right.
What is going on?
Yeah.
But, as my mother used to say, beta, shadi karna aasan hai, nibhana mushkil. Getting married is easy, staying married is hard. So, in order to
True.
compromise
Okay.
the marriage, I mean, not to compromise the marriage, to make a compromise for the marriage, they move.
Hmm.
And also,
Right.
perhaps it's a better life in terms of maybe financially, but also he'll be happier. Jo bhi hai, and she thinks she'll practice medicine there. So, it's
Right.
a
Right.
story of, I don't want to give too much away, but it's that story. And it's what happens
Mm-hmm.
to them when they arrive. And I think a lot of Indians watching this in India, if not all Indians, will understand that
Mm.
in this day and age, when Indians move abroad,
Right.
they are extremely well aware of what abroad is,
Mm-hmm.
right? We have the
Right.
internet.
Okay.
There
Yeah.
is an internet, but that
Mm.
doesn't mean you'll get there and like it.
Sure. Okay.
And
Mm-hmm.
there are things you like and there's things you don't like.
Right.
It- Any
Mm-hmm.
any family from anywhere who moves anywhere, some things are nice, some things are not nice. So
Mm.
it's a story about that. It's very funny. And, the kids are typical teenagers.
Right.
They have their own personalities. The two teenagers, the young one has his own personality. Some are more excited about being in America, some are less. Of course, their mother is concerned because, like all Indian mothers in India, she thinks abroad is very corrupting, not realizing that
Okay.
it's already corrupt enough, but you just don't know it. You know, and so she
Right.
has a lot
Right.
more access to those kids because she's also, at home with them, etc., etc. I
Mm.
won't give more away, but it's that story.
Right. Okay. So, I would want to talk about your character because, from the trailer alone, from the promos alone, there's so much, we see of Sudha, right? We see the caring side of her. We see the sort of fun side of her. We see this person who's also sort of, I wouldn't say worried, but also looking out for her family, right? So I would want to
Yeah.
know what about, Sudha's personality really drew you out and drew you closer to her in a way that it sort of fused you with her.
Well, first of all, the thing that drew me to the story and the script, because
Yeah,
first of all, I get a script, I have to like the script, not just the character, but the script
right,
as
right, right, right.
was that it's very funny. It's very sharply written. It's
Mm-hmm.
about modern day Indians
Right.
in the United States. I love that,
Mm-hmm.
and very,
Mm.
very like it's loaded with jokes. And as a stand-up comedian, that's important to me. I always
All,
look for.
yeah, of course. Yeah.
And then there was Sudha's character. I mean, she's a pretty straight up desi mom. It's not rocket science. It's like
Right.
she's,
Okay.
she wants her kids to do well. She takes care of them, but obviously she's very protective. And whatever needs to be done, she will do.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was
Right.
very young and very late at night, I told my mother once that, oh, I have a school play. First of all, I got like into trouble for not telling her earlier. But after she had lagawed one, two jhampers to me, she said, "Theek hai, kya hai? Where's your uniform?" So she had my costume and we didn't have a dryer or anything. And I had to go the
Mm,
next day. I remember she
mm.
washed them in the sink and then she how do you call it? Nichodo ko kya kehte hain? Wrung them in a
Yeah, yeah,
towel
yeah.
and then told me jump
Mm.
on the towel like this with your feet and then put them like this and then put her hair dryer. The thing is, by the morning, I had a perfect outfit and I went to the play.
Wow.
Because as an Indian mother, you do what you have to, or as any
Of
mother.
course,
Why do
yeah.
you think Indian mother? Mothers
Mm,
do what they have to make sure their kids don't stumble, don't fall. That's what Sudha
mm,
does.
mm, mm.
I mean, it wasn't. I don't think she's doing anything particularly off piste when it comes to Indian
Mm,
mothering.
mm, mm.
During the show, she goes a little bit off piste for sure. She does a couple of things that are way out. But then again, she's
Yeah.
highly educated. She's not scared of Americans or she's not in awe of America.
Mm, mm, mm,
And
mm,
she's
mm.
like
Yeah.
smarter than most people she meets. At least she thinks so. And frankly, she's like, and also she has that Indian thing that I'm a doctor. मैं देख लूंगी. I'm a
Okay.
doctor. I can handle this. So all in
Okay.
all, it was not something that I didn't recognize. I've
Mm,
seen people
mm,
like this. I've seen my mother's friends who were doctors, lady doctors, as we used to call them in India. They
mm,
always felt more smart and they always had more confidence than your average mom.
mm,
I
right.
just
Okay.
channeled all those aunties.
Right. You were discussing something about how your character doesn't sort of look up to the West or it doesn't idealize of sorts. It's sort of circumstantial that the story is sort of progressing and the plot is going forward. But I would want to know from your end, there are couple of times that it's happened where multiple Indian immigrant stories have come up from the West, and uh, in a lot of ways, when we are watching as Indian audiences, we always feel that there is a representation going. That obviously has led in the past across different projects. With regards to tropes, with regards to stereotypes, but from how naturally this seemed to come out in the trailers alone. I would want to know from you, how did you, how was it, how easy or difficult was it to sort of move away from the tropes, move away from any stereotype, and how relatable has this shown been for people sitting and viewing it from India?
I can't say how relatable it's been for people sitting in India because I'm not sitting in India,
Okay.
but obviously my family in India is like, oh, this is damn good, but they're my family, right?
Okay,
So
okay.
you will
Hmm.
tell me. I'm so excited to hear from people who are watching it in India. I don't know. I
Right.
should do something, and I should do. The people get on Instagram and say, "I'm
Hmm,
asking a
hmm, hmm.
question, answer, whatever that is." Maybe I'll do that.
Hmm, hmm, hmm,
It's
hmm.
not just my Instagram. It should be everyone's. I can't really
Right.
speak to that, but what I can say is
Hmm.
it was not difficult because I don't think that the script had a lot of stereotypy, tropey Indian
Okay.
stuff. That's
Hmm,
one
hmm,
thing. If I
hmm,
ever
hmm.
felt that something, like for example, if I felt that I always wanted to know why. If there was something I
Okay.
thought, you know,
Hmm,
uh,
hmm, hmm,
like for example, one of the things I did bring up with the
hmm,
writers was
hmm,
why is she wearing salwar kameez coming to Pittsburgh in the
hmm,
winter?
hmm, hmm.
Like,
Oh my God.
what is she thinking? And they had a
Right.
reason
Okay.
for it, which I
Hmm,
fully respect. And I said, okay, fine.
hmm.
Once I knew the
Okay.
reason, then I could imbue that sensibility to Sudha in that
Hmm, hmm,
moment. You
hmm,
know,
hmm, hmm,
if
hmm.
you see
Right.
Sudha throughout the rest of the show, she's wearing jeans, she's wearing, I mean, even if I'm home and it's warm here in the
Hmm.
UK, I will wear, like a kind of kurta pajama type of thing and be at home, or sometimes even go to the shops. I don't care.
Right.
So
Hmm, hmm, hmm,
I don't think there was a lot to worry about or
hmm,
not even
hmm,
worry to
hmm,
think
hmm,
about. And when there was
hmm.
something, I always asked, and the writers knew
Okay.
why, and we had a
Right.
discussion.
Right.
There were some
Hmm,
places where they let me, where I said, I don't think she would say this. I think she would say this. And they say,
hmm.
okay, fine.
Okay.
Because so I grew up in India.
Of course.
I'm not someone who was born and brought up here and then trying to play someone that I was imagining from my childhood. Literally,
Right.
I must have met 100 Sudha Pradeeps when I was 10 years old. I mean,
Right.
so,
Yeah.
and some part of Sudha Pradeep lives in me. Definitely the part that thinks kids should listen to her. That definitely lives in. So
That's great.
yeah, so it was that I do think, and I appreciate your point that I very much hope that Indians watching this across the globe, the diaspora, whether they, and also India,
Right.
can see how there has been a genuine attempt to tell a story in a way that's as real as you can for television and therefore not programmed.
Right. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
when Sudha is in the grocery store, she's wearing jeans and a coat. She's not wearing a bindi and running. I mean, why would she do that?
Of
She
course.
wouldn't
Of
do it
course.
in India. Why is she going to do it here?
Right. No. I mean, I do get where you're coming from, and it's quite important, for us to also as audience to just see as real as a representation, people can get. So
And
I
also,
would
can
want
I
to
say
know.
one other thing? Can I say one other thing here?
Yeah. Sure.
There's so many shows made about mainstream demographics here in the West. And some of them are absurd, like it would never happen in a million years. But viewers watch it and they say, okay, it's TV. And then it becomes the responsibility of one show about an Indian family to be completely authentic in all ways. That's a lot. That's too much.
Agreed.
If you
Yeah.
wanted that kind of authenticity from every show made about a white family, you'd have no television.
Obviously, yeah.
And we would all be the poorer for it. So this pressure that gets put on a TV show that's a funny story with a crazy crime in the middle, but the whole family happens to be desi, brown. And it's like, well, is every single thing they're doing absolutely authentic? Partly, I'm glad to have that pressure because we're one of the early shows. But I hope it doesn't last because that's an absurd way to make television.
Right. I mean, I get where you're coming from, to be honest. Like, it is a sort of responsibility falling on your shoulders, but there is the execution part that comes to it, which might or might not get affected depending on the sort of pressure that you might feel. But I feel like this conversation also comes uh, from a very rooted point of view. Like I know you agree with it, but at the same time, I'm just trying to highlight the fact of how, as a viewer, as an Indian viewer sitting here, to understand, like, for people who might not even have gone to the US, to see this, to be an introduction to for people who are actually going out and living their lives there. So I mean, it's not just this responsibility; it's also the entertainment part. But with the laughs come the responsibilities as well. And
I agree.
Yeah.
And so I think that because it's one of the first shows to do this, we will have responsibility and we should. My aim is to have so much television all over the world, great stories, very funny, and they just happen to be an Indian family, that it's becoming irrelevant.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, of course.
And hopefully that's where we go. Because like now when I see television that's made in India for India, I watched a great TV kind of a movie a couple of years ago called Ludo with Pankaj Tripathi. It was mental. Nothing like that would ever happen, but I loved it. But obviously, in India for Indians, we're not worried about not being represented. And the Indian diaspora is so vast that I would feel so grateful in my life if I have any part to play in bringing that kind of entertainment to people's televisions outside of India, and it's not weird or not like, oh my God, what is this? Time aayega. But we have to start somewhere. And I hope that I do think Pradeep's is a good beginning of something like that.
Right. I can already say that, from all of this, all the promos, everything that we have seen, of course, the show is out now, and, I'm yet to see it. But at the same time, from what I have seen, I see that being funny was the prerogative, being the just delivering on the comical scenario of it was also important for you all. And I'm excited as a viewer to actually get into it and explore that world of Sudha and her family. So
Yay.
yeah, so so I'll move on from from the show itself, and we'll talk more about you and your journey. I mean, you've been very open about how your journey has been since you were an investment banker, then you were a stay-at-home mom, and then you sort of transitioned into comedy. So without repeating it too much, my question would be about your initial moments. Like when you stepped onto the stage for the first time, what were the sort of emotions you were feeling at that moment? Because having not been in the spotlight, I presume that it might have been very daunting. But along with that, what was going on in your
I think, well, first of all, the first time I got on stage um, was not really, I had never seen live stand up. And I didn't really
yeah.
think I was going to be a stand up. Um, I thought, listen, how shall I put this? It was a kind of a fluke thing. A lot of alcohol was involved, just a lot. And it
Okay.
was like one of those things, but also, I had three young kids. It felt
Hmm.
reckless. It felt reckless in a way that was still acceptable. You don't want to have three
Okay.
kids and do something
Okay.
so reckless, like, you know, Nani Yana Jai types. It was like reckless but
Of
not
course.
mental.
Right.
And
Right.
I had never seen live stand up. I didn't really understand I knew intellectually what is stand up, and I'd seen a DVD of
Mm-hmm.
Eddie Murphy, who I think is very funny.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I did it, I think it was just like tukke se, like I was like, fine, chalo.
Okay. Okay.
So I
Okay.
wasn't thinking very deeply about it.
Okay.
But then what happened is, as I was doing it, and I got a laugh or two,
Mm-hmm.
I remember very clearly something in my head was like, oh, I mean, like I cannot never do. What is this? I have to find out this again.
Right.
And
Okay.
funnily enough, the next day I went home. I mean, that evening I went home, and then I started Googling stand-up comedy,
Mm-hmm.
reading about it and buying books. I've bought every book you can think of on stand-up comedy, even the most
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous ones. Then I talked to people. I didn't know any stand-ups, but I knew the people that were in that group, Funny
Mm-hmm.
Women UK.
Yeah.
And I just never stopped trying to be part of comedy. Like I felt lucky to
Mm-hmm.
just be somehow involved with this thing. The center of it was something funny. I'd always wanted to do that. The point
Right.
my mom used
Okay.
to say, "Tum baatein kam," always as a kid being like, oh, let me tell you this and chutkala sunai and this. It was always in me, but it was never something that was legitimate as a thing. It was like
Mm-hmm.
a bad habit. And in
Right.
India, especially when I was growing up,
Mm-hmm.
girls who talked a lot or who room and said something that made everyone laugh and in that way attracted attention to themselves, it was not a good quality. It
Right.
was certainly not
Okay.
a quality that is going to help
Mm-hmm.
you, which was what my
Yeah.
mother wanted, ki iski shaadi ho jaye. So in a way, it was like this secret that I enjoyed
Mm-hmm.
it so much, but it was like chup. And so I think even though I was so grown up and I had three kids, I think I always had that in me that if am I doing this because I have some desperate problem?
Mm-hmm.
And then when I started reading about it and Googling and going and watching stand up, I started watching stand up live. I realized
Okay.
that it may be a problem, a personality defect, but I don't care. Many of us have this personality defect. And it
Okay.
was lovely to meet other people like that.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I think now that I have a personality defect, neither do they, but it started like that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then, so it was, so to answer your question, my initial concerns were less, weirdly enough, about being on stage and more investigating what is it about me that wants to do this? Also, I had three children. I was not 20 years old. So if I
Of
was going to
course.
start
Yeah.
doing this thing, first of all, no one took it serious. I didn't tell anyone. For the longest time, I didn't tell
Mm.
my husband, I didn't tell anyone.
Oh. Okay. Okay.
But also, when I first started telling other mothers, they were like, what? And I think a lot of people thought, she's bored, and some women become interior designers, some start baking cakes. She's decided to go on stage and do this. But so I didn't talk about it much because I didn't want to have people's opinion on it. Because I was so sure this was the thing that I was never going to stop doing.
Right.
So I think that was more my concern. What is happening with me? What am I doing? Rather than going on stage and because I knew early on, people said sometimes audience laughs, sometimes they don't.
Right. I think everyone from whoever's visited your YouTube channel or your, even the channels where your small bits are out, I think a lot of them have found their sort of connect with you. And I feel like if you had a time machine of sorts to go back and sort of give yourself that confidence boost even more, of course, I would want to know, would you do that? Would you go and tell your past self at that moment about this sort of tonal shift that is going to be there in life and how confident you would be about it?
Yeah, I think when I was in Delhi University and I was like the tallest girl in all of Delhi, and I had and I wasn't fair because fair and lovely Indian girls are ever only fair. I wasn't fair. I was 5'10". I had like purra bal in a big jura because I had to have long hair because my father wanted me to have long hair. I think I used to walk around thinking, I hope mom finds a nice boy. Or I hope I join the civil service because that was like a high goal, कि IAS बस और कितनी भी काली हो कितनी भी लंबी हो IAS हो गई तो life, you're a success. I used to think that's the only way that I would ever. So confidence was always going to come somehow because of somebody else or something else. I would have, I think if I could, I would go back and I would say to that Sindhu, but listen, you have to work very hard. Mehnat ke bina to there's nothing in life. However, your life is probably not going to be tragic because someone else didn't do something or you didn't pass an exam. So just chill out a bit. Maybe I would say that. I don't think I would give it all away because I have loved being in academics. I love banking a lot. And it gave me a lot of stability, Finance gave me a lot of stability. Yeah. So I don't think I would necessarily give those secrets away to my younger self, but I would say relax, just relax a bit.
Have a beer because that's what sort of transition.
Yeah, just relax.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about you being a comedian. You reach this point where you sort of you not just making a name, but also sort of presenting your own brand of comedy, if I can put it like that. I would want to know from your end, as a comedian, since you've been in front of camera during a series, like how Pradeeps is. So how between doing Pradeeps and between doing a stand-up show, live in front of the audience, do you feel comedy is different on both ends? Do you have to do a lot of relearning or unlearning, technically speaking, when you went in front of camera and you transitioned into this character that wasn't you, this just from a technical point of view?
Well, some things are very similar, as in good writing will always shine. So a well-written line scene and a well-written line on stage will always hit.
Right.
So having an ear for that is helpful, whether I'm on stage or whether I'm in front of a camera. When I'm acting, I'm playing a role and I'm bringing that role to life with in collaboration with a writer who may or may not be known to me, the director, my scene partner. So it's not me, it's a team effort. And I have to listen to the director and I have to listen to what my scene partner needs. So my job is one part of the whole job. And it's not for me to be like, this is how I want to deliver this. It's like, what? It's not just about you, unless it's a solo scene and the camera is just on me. But when I'm doing stand-up, they're my lines. I've written them.
Right,
It's my
right.
party and I'll cry if I want to, kind of thing. If I want to deliver them upside down or if I want to deliver them in this speed, it's all up to me.
Right.
Right.
Mm,
So you can have, so in that way, I think of them as two very different forms of
mm.
being a comedy performer.
Okay. Right, right. Um, so as a comedian, when you sort of uh, present certain topics, right? I would want to know when you decide a set, what is it? I mean, of course, each special has its own sort of, lookout. But just maybe in a few, in a brief manner, if you could tell me, how do you sort of zero in on the sets? Do you try to keep it compact, or do you follow a narrative structure? What's the sort of idea that you use?
So my specials or my 1 hour shows are never set in advance.
Mm-hmm.
There, and I don't usually have one story. I mean, they'll be made. For me, a good hour is I could be talking about ice cream, then I can talk about God, then I can talk about
Mm.
matchsticks, then I can talk about
Right.
lamp. There doesn't have to be. You're here to listen to me be funny, right? I'll just make
Right.
sure that the transitions are not crazy. But even if I just stop and say, well, light bulbs, it's fine
Mm.
as long as the funny comes. So I
Right.
never
Right.
have a reason. It's never A to
Mm.
Z.
Okay.
But there has tended to be at a particular point in my life, I'm talking about some things because they're relevant
Mm-hmm.
to me. So when you put
Mm-hmm.
together the hour, I think, oh, this is what I'm talking about.
Okay. Okay.
So
Right.
that's where either the name comes from, or in my head, I start thinking, this is what I'm talking
Mm.
about.
Right. Right.
Um,
Mm.
that's it. It's nothing much more
Right.
complicated than that.
Okay. Right. So I think we've come to the end of this big sort of long questions that I had from my end. We'll do a quick rapid fire and end the conversation right there. So
Okay.
it'll be a quick sort of to and fro between us. So I'll begin with my first question. Uh, yeah. So if you were an alien, what planet would you call home?
Mercury. Is that a
Oh
planet?
wow. Yeah. But why?
Oh,
If,
because I'm a
if
Gemini.
oh, okay,
And
okay,
Mercury
okay.
is a planet.
Right. So, one superpower you wish you had.
To eat everything that I want and never really have to have any changes in my body that were disadvantageous to me.
Okay, okay, okay. Funny you should say that because the next question is around food. A food that you cannot absolutely say no to.
Dosa.
Oh, beautiful. Right. What is your spirit animal and why?
Snakes.
Oh, wow. And why?
I've always liked snakes. Pranav, I don't know what to tell you. I used to get into trouble when I was little because in monsoon I would go outside and there were a lot of cobras. I grew up in Lucknow and I would always go looking in the nali for them and everything. It was ridiculous. Always liked them. Always.
Okay. Which fruit or vegetable do you resemble the most?
I don't know if I resemble it, but I cannot live without mango. You can forget it.
Of
There's,
course. Okay.
I mean, if it was like anything, if my kids were like, we're going to go live in a country where there's no mangoes, I'd be like, well, I'm never visiting you.
Okay. Okay.
Unless I can
That's
bring my
quite the
mango.
love for mangoes. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
What's your favorite mode of transport and why?
Favorite mode of transport? Well, that's an unfair question because obviously I like to go home to India and my favorite mode of transport is biking, but cycle pe to nahi ja sakti na. So
Obviously.
I don't, okay, if I could get wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted, it would be a
Yeah.
bicycle.
Oh, beautiful. Okay. Um, if you were born elsewhere, anywhere, where else would you choose?
No, I always want to be born in
Nowhere.
it.
Okay, that's
Okay,
great.
do I have to answer
Um,
that? No, I
Sorry?
can't. Do I have
No,
to
no,
answer?
you. No,
Oh,
no,
wait,
no. That's an answer in
every
itself.
lifetime. Every lifetime.
Right.
I want.
One dish from India that you absolutely cannot resist. Of course, apart from dosa. I given the fact that you've already said an
Uh,
Indian dish.
So very simple West UP ki, like UP arhar ki dal
Mhm. Oh
with
wow. Okay. Right.
dal mirch chonk.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And finally, if you weren't who you are today, a comedian, an investment banker, what else would you be? Or if I can put it in a different way, you've already been a stand-up comedian, an actor, and an investment banker. What would you add to the what feather would you add to the cap?
I would be a professor. I was doing a PhD and I quit it because it
Okay.
was so difficult and boring. If I just stuck with that,
Mm-hmm.
I might be Dr. Sindhu, not Dr. Sudha Pradeep, but Dr. Sindhu Venkatnarayan from having a PhD in political theory. That could be.
That's great. That could have been something maybe for the next series you can sort of channel that.
Exactly. I thought you were going to say maybe for your next life. Maybe. Agle janam.
Nay, nay, you can fit in many lifetimes within this. But thank you so much for joining us, Sindhu. This was a great chat. We're all looking forward to more and more such shows coming from your end and exploring more stand-up shows from your end. So thank you so much. I was Pranav. I'm from Indulge, and it was a great joy talking to you. I hope you had a good time as well.
Thanks so much, Pranav. I loved it. I loved it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Means a lot.